Now
on News Talk 105.9 WMAL.
O'Connor and Company.
It's 8:06, and we're flying through this Wednesday morning. It's been a busy one. As always, if you missed any of it, please download the podcast, take a listen. You'll like what you hear. Coming up in 30 minutes, we're going to check in with Mark Morgan. He is the former head of Customs and Border Patrol, and he'll give us his take on how bad it is down there at the border. I'm Larry O'Connor alongside Mercedes Schlapp. Mercedes.
Have we been together for the past 3 hours? This is insane. It's
We've
like
been
flown
together
by.
since time immemorial. Mercedes is my radio soulmate.
Oh, that is so sweet.
It's also just not true at
so-
all. Coming up now, we've got the president of the D.C. Police Union, Greg Pemberton. Greg, I hear from Trayon White that crime is so bad that this is literally a war zone, and he's not wrong. So that means it's time to call in the National Guard. That sounds kind of drastic. Gee, Greg, can you think of something else that might be able to help the crime problem in D.C.?
Oh, I don't know, Larry. Maybe what we've been shouting from the rooftops for the past 3 years is that we just need them to repeal all of this ridiculous reform that they've put through over the past few years, and that we need more cops, and they need to allow us to go out and do our jobs so we can protect these communities and get these bad guys off the street. It really is ridiculous to hear what this gentleman is saying, and now calling for the National Guard after the bill that I've even been complaining about demilitarizes the police department, and now he wants Humvees and camouflage army individuals with rifles standing on the corners. It's pretty preposterous.
Well, and people might like this idea. You heard people cheering, "That's right, we need the National Guard." But I mean, if people don't know this already, I would appreciate you sort of informing them. The difference between a properly trained law enforcement officer working for the district council to keep the peace and to enforce laws and to investigate crimes versus a National Guardsman.
Right. So we do call in the National Guard for things like civil unrest or major events or inauguration or these enormous things that happen in the District of Columbia. And they do a phenomenal job, and they're great people. And they do have arrest authority, but that's really for that civil disturbance sort of riot type environment. They're not equipped to go out and investigate shootings and homicides, and they're not detectives. They don't know how to secure a crime scene. They don't know how to do any of the work that we do. They don't have a comprehensive understanding of Title 23 in the criminal code. That's not what they're for. When we're calling them in, they're not here to investigate violent crime. That's not within their purview. And what Councilmember White is asking for is he's asking for more police officers, really. He wants people to come in and deal with the violence that's happening in his ward. And the problem is that he's driven them out with all of the mountains of legislation that he's passed that's prevented police officers from doing their jobs and made working in the District of Columbia as a police officer miserable.
Yeah, well, 13 people were killed in 10 shootings so far in August. This pushes the total homicide number to at least 158 homicides this year. It's an increase of about 22% since last year. So 2023 has become the deadliest year in 2 decades. What is driving this, in addition to what we're seeing with the lack of the resources that the police force needs?
Right. So, our officers are out here, and we're short about 500 right now, which is one of the main problems. But we're still doing our jobs. We're still going to these crime scenes. We're still figuring out who's responsible for them. We're still handcuffing people. We still have detectives that are typing warrants and getting people arrested. And the problem is that when we bring those suspects down to the U.S. Attorney's Office to what we call paper those cases, which is to bring charges and actually put them in the system, they're no papering the vast majority of those cases. You may have seen recent reporting saying the U.S. Attorney's Office no papers 67% of the cases. That means 2/3 of the arrests that we make on the street, the person is processed and then they're just released with no charges. And if there's no consequences for engaging in this kind of behavior, for armed carjackings and shootings and stabbings and even rapes, people are going to go out and just recidivate it and continue to commit these crimes over and over again. And we see the same group of people committing the same crimes over and over again, and we can't seem to get them in the system, get them charged, and get them removed from the streets.
By the way, 46% of the cases where there was an arrest made but they were no papered, as you said, which basically means the prosecutor dropped the charges. 46% of those charges, including arrests for illegal possession of a firearm. And anytime we hear about violent crime and shootings and horrific drive-by shootings and children getting caught in the crossfire, we're told we need more gun laws. Well, Mr. Pemberton, that may be so. I don't want to drag you into the fight over gun laws, other than the fact that maybe if they actually prosecute those arrested on gun laws now, that might make a difference. Why do we need more laws if you refuse to prosecute the laws we've got?
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. You hear politicians all over the District of Columbia, anytime there's questions about violence, is, well, we need to do something about illegal guns. We need to make sure that we can get these illegal guns off the street. Well, our officers took 3,000 guns off the street last year, all of them illegal. And the number of charges that came out of those is minimal. And even when people are charged and convicted of being in possession of a firearm, the average penalty that a person gets for being convicted of being in possession of an illegal gun is 6 months supervised probation. That's the going rate right now for carrying a gun, which means nothing to criminals out here. So they're going to carry guns, and they're more than willing to use them. And so until people get serious about actually charging people who have these guns, that's all just political rhetoric.
You just heard Mercedes point out that there's a lack of resources for cops in D.C. That may be the case, but is that the entirety of it? I mean, if you could actually speak with Trayon White, I mean, he says he's been talking to the head of the National Guard, he's been talking to the chief of police. I don't know if he's talked to you or not, but is this really a question of lack of resources, or is it really a question of how those resources are being spent and the rules of engagement that your cops are allowed to exercise based on actual successful law enforcement tactics?
Well, it's all of that. I mean, you're being short 500 police officers in a 3,600 member agency is not easy to get past. And just to put it in perspective, to make up the gap between the lack of police officers that we have and the demand that the city calls for, we use 1.1 million hours of overtime every year, which is record breaking. We've never seen before. And that's not dollars. That's 1.1 million hours. I mean, this is the equivalent of 600 additional employees. And that's what our officers are going out working every day to make sure that we can respond to these radio runs and help these citizens that are calling for us so we can get out there and deal with it. So that there's a huge shortage of police. But you're absolutely right. It's not just that. It's that the officers that we do have that are out doing their job can't do the job in a professional and responsible and effective way anymore because they've passed so much of this, what they call reform legislation, that prohibits police officers from interacting with people in a way that's actually going to allow us to figure out who's responsible for these crimes and put handcuffs on them. And until they repeal that stuff, we're not going to be able to solve these problems.
Yeah. Do you also find that part of the problem is the police force feeling demoralized as they're demonized time and time again by the left? Is that a big issue with recruitment in D.C.?
Oh, absolutely. And that's, something that's really hard to quantify. But, when we talk to our members, rank and file members all over the place, they don't feel that they're backed up by the city. They don't feel like they're backed up by the command staff. They don't think that these elected officials want them out here doing their job. And that's why a lot of people leave. It's just a very uncomfortable environment to work in. And so we've seen over 1,200, almost 1,300 now police officers leave since the beginning of 2020. And we can't stop that hemorrhaging until we start treating these employees right.
If Councilmember Trayon White really is concerned about the people in his district and the violent crime, if he's concerned about the war zone, as he properly calls it, that has become the District of Columbia, if he's really concerned about the little 2-year-old child who is now, there's been an Amber Alert issued, as you heard from the news update from John Matthews moments ago, because this 2-year-old child was in the back of an SUV that was stolen in the district. If he really cares, he should probably talk to Greg Pemberton and the cops themselves, instead of giving a press conference and leading people in chants. Let's really fix this. That little 2-year-old deserves better. That 2-year-old's parents deserve better, because guess what? Black lives really do matter. Let's actually do something about it. Greg Pemberton, thank you, sir, for joining us. I appreciate it as always.
Larry, Mercedes, thank you guys so much.
It's 8:15. WMAL traffic and weather every 10 minutes. First on the 5s with Jamie Whitten. She's in the Hadid Carpet Cleaning Traffic Center.
WMAL. Making sense of the news. Live from the Home Paramount Pest Control Studios.
Home Paramount, the leader in pest control since 1939.
Carpet One Alexandria celebrates Made in America brands. AlexandriaCarpet1.com. On the next Vince Coglianese Show, the biggest threat to the left? The truth. It tells you a lot. Join us 3 to 6 right here on WMAL.
Mercedes, I know we've been tracking this story. We both are very interested in pop culture, even if it's not necessarily pop culture that's directed right toward us or our generation. But we've got kids, and we see this. And Neo is am I pronouncing that right? Is it Neo or Neo? Neo. Hip-hop star.
I think it's Neo.
You
can tell we're not. I mean, look
exactly.
at us. We're so pathetic.
But he is very influential, and he sat down for an
Yeah.
interview for a podcast. It appeared, and he said this about transitioning children. So common sense. Listen.
If your little boy comes to you and says, "Daddy, I want to be a girl," and you just let him rock with that, you just let.
Right.
He's 5.
Right. And where did he get that
If
from?
you let this 5-year-old boy decide to eat candy all day, he's going to do that.
Exactly.
Like, when did it become a good idea to let a 5-year-old, let a 6-year-old, let a 12-year-old make a life-changing decision for themselves?
Right.
When did that happen?
Right.
Like, I don't understand that. I don't get that.
And to medicate these young kids that are 5, 6, growing up and knowing that it affects their brain, it affects their organs, it makes them sick, but they're not allowed to do drugs, they're not allowed to do alcohol.
Right.
We can medicate
He
them
can't
up.
drive a car yet, but he can decide his sex.
Right, right. What sexual orientation, and you can cut off his pee-pee, and that, to me, that makes no sense whatsoever.
I don't know if this is true, but I heard a rumor that they either passed or are trying to pass a law in LA that states if your child comes to you and asks to do some of these things and you say no, they can take your kid from you.
Yeah, that's true. Just passed in California.
That makes no sense.
That's right. It doesn't make any sense. And that's all common sense what Neo was saying there. He went on to say, by the way, listen, if my little boy comes to me and says, "Daddy, I think I'm a girl," and I say, "Well, why do you think you're a girl?" And he says, "Well, because I want to play with dolls." Neo said, "I'm his dad, and I'm going to say, listen, son, you can play with dolls, but that doesn't make you a girl. You can be a boy who plays with dolls, and that's okay. And that's how we're supposed to raise our children, for God's sake." It's called
but
parenting.
the story gets more complicated because the publicist put out an apology that Neo did not in any way approve. And it had said, "After much reflection, I'd like to express my deepest apologies to anyone that I may have hurt with my comments on parenting and gender identity." So they go on and on saying that these comments could have been interpreted as insensitive and offensive. He later comes out, Neo, and he says,
"Well, hold
no
that thought.
way.
I want to save
don't
this
bully
punchline."
me.
Wait. Save this for the punchline, because this is an amazing moment here when the publicist puts out this statement without Neo's approval, and it's written like anybody like an activist. Gender identity is nuanced. I can honestly admit I plan to better educate myself on the topic. I'm too stupid to have these common sense positions that I just had, says his publicist. Well, in a moment, you'll hear what Neo said, because he did not approve that apology. He did not approve that statement. He stands by his position, and he made that clear. And we're going to share that with you in just a moment.
All right. If your son comes to you and says, "Daddy, I want to be a girl," ask your son, "Son, what is a girl?"
That's a good one.
What is he going to do? He's going to say, well, he might.
He like I said, he goes on. Neo says, "I play with dolls." Well, then you're a boy who plays with dolls, but that doesn't make you a girl. That's wisdom, way more wisdom than the Democrat caucus in Congress, and certainly in the Virginia Senate. Danica Rome, I'd love to hear Danica Rome respond to that with her vast scientific abilities, as Danica Rome is trying to become a senator now in Virginia. But Mercedes Schlapp, as you mentioned, the publicist put out an apology for Neo without his approval. Do you want to hear what Neo really believes?
Yes, please.
Share. He opened up his camera on Instagram and he said, "That apology is not for me. Here's what I really think."
What's going on, loved ones? This is Neo. All right, listen. I normally don't give too much of a damn about what y'all think about what I do, what y'all have to say about what I say, whatever. I normally don't care because, like I said, opinions ain't special. Everybody got one. However, this is something I feel very strongly on, and I need y'all to hear this from the horse's mouth, not the publicist's computer. So check this out. First and foremost, I do not apologize for having an opinion on this matter. I am a 43-year-old heterosexual man raising 5 boys and 2 girls, okay? That's my reality. Now, if my opinion offended somebody, yeah, sure, I apologize for you being offended because that wasn't my intention. My intention is never to offend anybody. However, I'm entitled to feel how I feel. I'm absolutely entitled to feel how I feel the same way you are entitled to feel how you feel. I ain't asked nobody to follow me. I ain't asked nobody to agree with me. I was asked a question and I answered the damn question, okay? I have no beef with the LGBTQIA plus community whatsoever. I ain't got no beef with y'all. Do whatever the hell it is you want to do. Do what you want to do with your kids. However, somebody asked my opinion on this matter, and this is how I feel. I will never be okay with allowing a child to make a decision that detrimental to their life. I will never be okay with that. I don't care. I definitely plan to educate myself a little bit more on this matter. However, I doubt that there's any book anywhere or any opinion that somebody's going to tell me that's going to make me okay with letting a child make a decision like that. That's
Amen. Amen. He went on for another minute there, but that's what needs to be done. And people need to be able
We
to
got to stand up and protect our children and stop apologizing for being right on this issue. There are truth and there are lies. And the truth is that these children should not in any way be allowed to change their gender at the age of 14, at the age of 12. It's an outrage. It needs to stop, and we need to stand up.
It's just impossible. You can't do it anyway. You can pretend, you can surgically modify yourself, you can take drugs to make you look a certain way, but
for the rest of your life, you're taking drugs.
You still haven't changed who you are and the way God made you, and God did not put you in the wrong body. How about we actually approach our children with love instead of actually saying, you're right, you need to change fundamentally who you are? That's disgusting. We're winning on this issue. Stay tuned. It's 8:30.
WMAL-FM, Woodbridge, Washington, a Cumulus media station.
Making sense of the news.
News Talk 105.9.
News now
On News Talk 105.9 WMAL.
O'Connor and Company.
It's 8:36 this Wednesday morning. We're 30 minutes away from handing it off to Chris Plant. It's Larry O'Connor alongside Mercedes Schlapp, who's been with us on this Wednesday morning. Thanks for being here, Mercedes.
I feel like I've been with you for the past 24 hours. It's been so long.
Actually, you will be right back where you're sitting tomorrow as well for our
tomorrow.
Thursday extravaganza.
I know.
Joining us right now is Mark Morgan. He's a visiting fellow in the Border Security and Immigration Center over at Heritage and also former acting commissioner of U.S. Customs and Border Protection under President Trump. And boy, what a difference an administration makes, Mark Morgan. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks, Larry. Mercedes, great to hear your voice.
I'm sure you've seen these harrowing images that Fox News captured. Men armed with rifles and body armor coming across the southern border. I'm sorry, I thought that these were women and children who were fleeing the desperate economy and crime-ridden streets of Honduras, that we should open our nation up to help them seeking asylum. What kind of asylum seekers have body armor and rifles?
Yeah, exactly, Larry. And look, you hit on one of the things that really gets me so fired up, because it really is one of the big false narratives being thrust by the liberal media and this White House, is that the only thing happening at our border is poor, vulnerable migrants looking for a better life, right? That's the narrative, and nothing else is going on. And it's a big lie. And it's a lie that's jeopardizing every aspect of our nation's health, public safety, and national security. The reality, what's happening on our southwest border, is even those vulnerable migrants looking for a better life, they're actually being used by the cartels to further their widespread criminal activities, to get drugs across, criminals, and potential national security threats. And what we saw in Fontaine, Texas, which is a little west of Rio Grande City, look, we should all be terrified, right? But here's the thing. This isn't the first time, Larry. This isn't the first time we've seen this. This isn't the first time we've seen these pictures. But yet what happens? The only people who are talking about are some conservative networks. On the liberal media, total silence. We don't hear a word about it. That's part of the problem.
Mark, how in danger are our border agents right now? Are they in being put in harm's way? I mean, obviously we're seeing this. It feels like these cartels and the human traffickers are just so emboldened right now by knowing that they can get these illegal immigrants and these families and children across the border because there really is no way to control the situation right now on the southern border.
Yeah, Mercedes, look, that is a great question and a great point. Think about this. So we saw those pictures of in Fontaine, Texas, but that wasn't just this past couple of weeks is not the only pictures. There was another picture of a smuggler, Mercedes, to your point, that with a long gun, right, with an AR-style rifle, had actually waded across the Rio Grande River all the way to smuggle in a group of illegal aliens got onto U.S. soil, made sure that they were there, and then he turned around and went back. I mean, they are so emboldened that now they're going farther and deeper into the United States when they're armed and they have full ballistic kits on. This, again, should be shocking to us. And with respect to the armed folks, look, the average Border Patrol agent, they don't have the specialized training that they would need to confront some of these organized groups. Because you got to remember, many of these smugglers were former military operatives, in the Mexican military, and then have obviously crossed over. And so that's why Border Patrol's elite BORTAC unit, their elite tactical units called in these situations. But oftentimes, by the time they get there, these individuals have absconded and they're back to Mexico.
Well, Mark Morgan, to be fair, those smugglers could just be returning all of the guns that the Obama administration smuggled to them back during the Fast and Furious debacle. Mark, I'd love for you to also comment on the we always hear about root causes. Well, the state of Massachusetts yesterday declared a state of emergency because, as they put it, illegal immigration in that state has become unsustainable. They've got too many people. They have no housing. They have no resources for them. They're overwhelmed. And they're only talking about 20,000 people in the system, nothing like an actual border state. This is the same state that called a sanctuary policy back in 2017 to make headlines and push back against the Trump administration's policies. These people who are crossing are not stupid. They know exactly what happens in America. When they see a place like Massachusetts or California or New York say, come on, bring us, you're tired, you're poor, you're hungry, we're a sanctuary state. That's a draw. That's a magnet for them, isn't it? Aren't they part of the problem here?
Absolutely. Well said. I couldn't have said better myself, Larry. And a couple things come to mind. One, clearly hypocrisy has no bounds, number one. Yeah. Right. Number two, you're exactly right. I say this all the time. Understanding what's happening on our border, you don't have to be a border security expert or policy expert. You just have to make sure you don't devoid yourself of common sense. And you just described it perfectly. The illegal aliens are coming across. They know exactly what they're doing. They know what they're doing by working with the cartels to get across. They know once they hit U.S. soil, they're going to be released, and then NGOs are going to take over, and they're going to, at the taxpayers' expense, fly them to these sanctuary cities. As you said, then they're going to be treated like American citizens every step of the way. And what's so frustrating is here's what both Massachusetts and New York City and other sanctuary cities are doing. They're not opining to secure the border, to actually stem the flow and stop the flow of illegal immigration. That's not what they're asking for. They're asking for U.S. taxpayers to give them more money to react to how they're going to take care of the illegal aliens after the fact when they're already in the country. That is insane. My analogy is this. So your roof is blown off in a tornado and it's raining, and you call a water mitigation team in to clean your furniture and carpet while it's still raining. You have no roof. That's stupid. It's illogical. Fix the roof, and then you can take care of what's on the inside.
We need Mark Morgan. We need people like Mark Morgan back in the Department of Homeland Security, and specifically in ICE and Customs and Border Protection. And that only happens by getting rid of this administration. Mark Morgan, thank you always for joining us.
Larry Mercedes, you bet. Thanks.
I want to tell you about an incredible offer now for all my fellow wine enthusiasts. That's you, Mercedes. I mentioned wine, and you should see her perk up. She sits at the front of the chair. Oh, you are big.
You're the ambassador of wine. I just can't believe it.
And I have a reputation to maintain. And I'm excited to announce that the Larry Wine Club, aren't you jealous that I have a wine club? I have a Larry
You
Wine
have a
Club.
wine club. That's ridiculous.
We're now offering an exclusive Grand Cru membership. If you love great wine like me and you love great deals, listen to this. For just $100 per quarter, you receive my entire fall wine collection. That's 6 bottles hand-selected by me. This week's I get to meet up with my friends over at Wine Outlet and sample the wines. They're going to be perfect. You're going to love them. The fall collection isn't the only thing you receive with the Grand Cru membership. You also will be the first to receive tickets for our wine tasting event coming up on September 8th and other unique wine gifts just for you. Visit LarryWineClub.com, LarryWineClub.com. Well, we've been talking earlier today about the first debate of the Republican candidates coming up in 2 weeks from today, but now we've got an announcement about the next debate, the second debate. This will be at the Reagan Library, and this one will be televised by Fox Business. So we're going from Fox News for this first debate to Fox Business for the second debate. There's going to be a higher threshold for this debate coming up on September 27th, so there could be a much smaller field depending on whether candidates qualify or not. But that's 2 for 2 for Fox, right? Where's the?
Yeah, no, that's a big win. And they announced that Univision and Rumble will also be partners for the second debate. We know Rumble's a conservative leading competitor to YouTube. They'll broadcast it. But the Univision was an interesting pick because they are super left. I mean, they've really lost their way in terms of how they broadcast their news, to say the least.
Yeah, Rumble, by the way, is also webcasting this first debate as well. If you want to watch the stream, that'll be on Rumble. So good for Rumble. They're 2 for 2 as well. I agree the Univision aspect of this is curious, depending on who they pick to be the moderators from Univision. Who do you think Fox Business should pick as the moderators?
We were talking about that. I think Maria Bartiromo would be a natural pick for that, and I also believe Stuart Varney. I think those are their 2 strongest host. I would say like Larry Kudlow is a great guy. I love Larry, but Larry obviously he worked for President Trump, so I think that will exclude him from being one
Sadly,
of the hosts
it would, but
of
you're
the
right.
debates.
Being actually an employee of the administration would keep him out of the running as a moderator. What about Sean Duffy, former congressman who also has a primetime show on Fox Business?
That's a possibility as well. I just think that Varney and Bartiromo are more of your journalist type, newsy types. As opposed to being a former congressman involved there.
I hear you.
But I will say...
I refuse to cede that it takes a journalist to moderate a debate.
Okay, no. Okay, yeah, that's fine. We can have a whole discussion in a whole hour talking about that, Larry. I think you'd make a great moderator for the debate.
We'll do that tomorrow. We'll have that discussion tomorrow. It's 8:52.
Yeah, let's do that.
That's a wrap, Mercedes, but good news. You're back tomorrow.
Yes, I can't wait.
Go play some tennis.
I wish. I got to go hang out with Chris Plant. Oh, wait. Chris Plant is here.
There he is. It's Christopher Plant.
It's true.
I go from Larry to Chris. It's crazy.
And then back again. It's a terrible spiral you're in.
I'm going to need therapy, let me tell you.
Yeah, well, that's the company will help with that, I think. Joe Biden will help with that. Everybody will help with that. You see, the big lottery winner last night, you see that in Florida, $1.58 billion. And then, if you take the cash buy, you get about half of that. And then the government takes half of that. And it turns out that goes to a